Like what you see here? Then be sure to subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8, a channel devoted to the history of college football. New videos drop twice a week. Click the card in the upper right corner or the link in the description to subscribe now. And now, on with our feature presentation.
I want to give you a hypothetical scenario. As you might know, The Masked Singer is just about the most popular show that Fox has going for it right now. The show about celebrities wearing bizarre costumes and singing, and having people try and guess who they are, is a ratings juggernaut, and is just about one of the only shows on television today that draws incredible ratings and feels like an event on a week-to-week basis. Also, as you know, Fox holds the rights to show the World Series. Now, I want you to imagine that Fox loves The Masked Singer so much, and they don't want to preempt it for a week, because that could be dangerous. The overlap between people who like that show and the people who like watching sports probably isn't a ton, and you always risk the possibility that if you don't show The Masked Singer one week, the viewer could channel surf and find another show that they like better. So they call up MLB and call up Rob Manfred's office and say, "Hey there, I have a little favor I want to ask you. I know we're supposed to start the World Series at 8 o'clock Eastern, but can we push it back so that we can show The Masked Singer beforehand?" As you can expect, in that hypothetical scenario, Manfred and company would be flabbergasted. You're telling us you want to start the World Series later, lose the younger audience, make the fans brave colder weather, and delay the start time because you want to air a TV program? Well, as crazy as this hypothetical might sound, that's exactly what was being discussed for this game right here, which was Game 3 of the 1976 American League Championship Series. This game at Yankee Stadium was absolutely massive, and that's putting it lightly. In a best-of-5 series, the team that goes up 2-1 in the series wins more often than not. And after the Yankees won Game 1 by a final score of 41, and the Royals won Game 2 by a final score of 7-3, this game was going to determine who takes that all-important 2-1 series lead and winds up one game away from making it to the World Series, which for the Yankees would have been their first since 1964, and for the Royals would have been their first ever. But in the eyes of ABC, the network broadcasting the game, that game wasn't the most important thing that could have been happening that night, because they wanted to air a certain show beforehand, and to say that MLB threw a fit when they heard ABC's plan would be an understatement. Because this is the story behind one of the craziest broadcasting dramas in the history of the ALCS and in the history of ABC. Before I talk about what ABC's request was when it came to Game 3 of the ALCS, we need some context to understand what ABC usually aired on this day. Game 3 was set to take place on Tuesday, October 12th, and this was always the plan. Game 1 was on Saturday, Game 2 was on Sunday, and then you had the scheduled off day for travel-related reasons on Monday. So it's not like there was a rainout or a postponement that forced a game on Tuesday when that was never supposed to be the plan. ABC knew from day one that they were going to be showing a Tuesday night game. Now, there were good news and bad news to ABC having the rights to broadcast the ALCS. The good news is that live sports typically draw great ratings, because they're the one thing that you can't rely on for reruns. You need to know the outcome as it happens. Baseball was also a fantastic sport for ratings, especially for a playoff game, and especially for a game involving the most popular and the most hated team in the country, the New York Yankees, playing in the top media market in the nation. Plus, unlike TV shows, which give you 30 minutes of high ratings, and then that's it, especially if a baseball game is good, you'll get millions upon millions of people watching for 3 hours, with no drop-off. If anything, if the game is great, the ratings only go up. And how many other programs can you say that about, where the ratings increase as the show goes on? However, even though the ALCS was going to be a ratings win for ABC, on Tuesday night, there was bad news. Remember that part of the reason that ABC bid for the rights to Monday Night Football when CBS and NBC didn't was because they needed to compete with the other networks, because they didn't have great programming options and were dismal in the ratings. Sports were being used as a way to get the ratings up and not have to rely on original programming. And you can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. But by 1976, on Tuesday nights for ABC, that couldn't be further from the truth. Because in 1976, when you turned on your TV at 8 o'clock p.m., you were treated to this.
Sunday, Monday, happy days.
That's right. I don't even need to play any more outside of those few notes. Happy Days, otherwise known as the biggest show in the country. By 1976, the fourth season of the show, Happy Days, was a ratings juggernaut and was appointment television. How big was the show? It was so big that the theme song to the show by Pratt and McLean was a top 5 hit on the Billboard Hot 100 and was one of the biggest selling songs of the year. Know the song Dream On by Aerosmith? Of course you do. Well, in 1976, according to Cashbox, the Happy Days theme song sold more copies. Fonzie became one of the most popular television characters in America, and the show still lives on nearly half a century later for being one of the most iconic TV shows of the entire 1970s. And when I say that it was a ratings juggernaut, I truly mean it. Not only was it the #1 show in the country, but it drew an average Nielsen rating of 31.5, meaning that every Tuesday night at 8 o'clock, 31.5% of American households that had TV watched the show. Now, to put that number into perspective, in 1976, 97% of American homes had a TV, coming out to roughly 70 million homes. This means that over 22 million households watched this show every week, and in 1976, the average household consisted of 3.39 people, so you can do the math there. It's not crazy to say that on a really good night, 75 million people tuned into ABC to see what Fonzie would do. ABC had firmly established itself in the Big Three by 1976, even being #1 according to many. And while there were a bunch of reasons for that, like the rise of Monday Night Football and other rating successes like Laverne and Shirley, The $6 Million Man, Charlie's Angels, and their Sunday and Monday night movies, Happy Days was the anchor. Happy Days was the driving force. And there's a problem with ABC having to air Game 3 of the ALCS on Tuesday night at 8:15. They can't show Happy Days. They can't show their cash cow. And they can't show their moneymaker. On one hand, there was a benefit to this, and that was the fact that during the 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock hours, they would have a net gain, since their usual programming past 9 o'clock, with shows like Family and Rich Man Poor Book, didn't draw too high ratings, since CBS dominated that block with shows like MASH and One Day at a Time. But on the other hand, they're going to take a massive beating at the 8 o'clock hour, because Happy Days appeal to the general public a lot more than a baseball game. Again, we're talking about a show that, unscientifically speaking, roughly 75 million people watched each week on a good night. They've got to dump that for a week because they had to air baseball. Or do they? Because that's when ABC hatched up an idea. Again, Game 3 of the ALCS, this game right here, was supposed to start at 8:15. ABC would come on the air at 8 o'clock, do their pregame show and whatnot, and then show the first pitch and continue with the broadcast. What if we push Game 3 back a bit? What if we push Game 3 back by 15 minutes to 8:30? We'll cancel the pregame show and all that, and we'll just jump straight into the game. It's a win-win for everyone. We get to show Happy Days, and baseball gets a giant lead-in, since instead of having a lead-in program that's a news program or a local show, your lead-in program is now literally the #1 TV show in the country. What could possibly go wrong? What could you hate about this plan? Well, for MLB, the answer was a lot. a heck of a lot. Remember, only recently did baseball play games like this at night, and even that was viewed by people as a controversial switch. So now, we're going to push the game back later, not because of an actual important event, like a State of the Union address, or because of a scheduling conflict that can't be avoided, or because of something involving the weather, but because of a TV show that can just be shown next week. We're going to make the game, which is held in New York, start later, causing a bunch of people to miss the end because they have to get up for work the next day, or because they're kids, and no kid is going to be allowed to stay up past 11 or so on a school night. It's already going to be cold, seeing as it's a night in the middle of October in the Bronx, and we're going to force fans to brave colder weather for an additional 15 minutes when they're already freezing their butts off to be there? Or we have to redo all the tickets that were distributed with an 8:15 start time and change the times at 8:30? And if we don't, we potentially set ourselves up for a lawsuit regarding false advertising? For ABC, this seemed like a no-brainer, but for MLB, it was a no-brainer in the opposite direction, because for MLB, it was a logistical nightmare to try and do this. An ABC spokesperson hilariously tried to say that the motive behind this was unselfish and pure, which I highly doubt, seeing as if you had literally any other show besides Happy Days that night, you would have no problem starting the game at 8:15. However, the spokesperson said, "We were prepared to cancel the pregame show, which would have cost us money because we would have had to return what the sponsors already paid. It also would have given the game that great audience lead-in. The Yankees love the idea, so did the American League, but for some reason, the commissioner said no." Again, I highly doubt that canceling the pregame show would have cost you money. Sure, you have to pay money back to the companies that bought ads for the 15-minute show, but you know how you get that money back? By having companies buy ads for a 30-minute show that's literally the #1 show in the country. That's like me selling a ticket for a sporting event and then buying it back so I can resell it to someone at a higher cost. I can't say that I'm losing money by buying the ticket back, because at the end of the day, I'm gaining money when I resell it. And MLB saw right through this. Said a spokesman for the commissioner's office, "Tickets have been printed, sold, and distributed with the 8:15 starting time. The starting time had been widely publicized. We are in favor of night games, because it makes them available to so many more people. But we are pushing to have the starting times as early as possible, so children and people who have to get up early for work can watch." The commissioner did what he felt was best for baseball. Just like that, ABC's bold request was denied. They would have to preempt Happy Days for the night of Tuesday, October 12th, as they couldn't get the start time pushed back. And even though the Yankees won 5-3 in a 3-hour game to give the Yanks a 2-1 series lead, as you could tell from the highlights, ABC took somewhat of a beating in the ratings, as even though they were still #1, the game was viewed in 14 million homes, compared to Happy Days, which was seen in an average of 22 million homes. So ABC definitely had the right idea with wanting to show Happy Days in its usual time slot however possible, but MLB stepped in and stopped it from happening. In today's day and age, I can't see anything like this ever happening again, especially because of the segmented nature of TV today and the ability to rewatch shows later, where no show can ever have the relevance in pop culture as appointment TV as Happy Days did in 1976. Outside of a big governmental event, like the president making a speech, which is really more of a news story than anything else, I can't see any television program, let alone a scripted entertainment show like Happy Days, ever forcing the delay of a prominent baseball game, or a network trying to get that delay to happen. Just goes to show you how much different the media landscape was in 1976. Because in 1976, when ABC saw MLB's response to their request, let's just say that for the company, it was not a happy day.
Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot.
Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.